Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew, and again, another knife review tonight. And this one is the Kubey Drake Nest, and it is the S, according to the steel markings, S30V, which is a pretty good steel and relatively inexpensive as well. Right around the $100 mark or just below it. Whichever one you look at, it's going to cost you about $100 depending on your taxes and all that sort of stuff, within a few dollars of such. So very, very nice in that respect. Grivery handles or FRN, fiberglass reinforced nylon, what you want to do it. We'll get to that in a minute. Almost deep carry clip in this sort of worn cliffy blade. In fact, one moment. I had forgotten something just before I sat down. So, hey, as you can tell, I don't edit or anything. So when I screw stuff up, it's still in the video. Isn't that awesome? All right. So first things first, the empirical measurements or standardized measurements, whichever way you want to look at it. Almost 8 inches tip to tail. Right about 3.5 tip of blade to scale. Da, da, da. And along the edge from tip to choil. A little over 3 inches. About 3.25. With that little tiny finger sharpening choil there. All right, so it's 3.5 tip to scale. A little bit, about 3.25 actual cutting edge. Right? And it's not that heavy. It's not a bad lightweight style knife, that's for sure. Just over that ounce per inch, about 3.5 ounces, a little over 3.56, 3.57. I'll blow some dust off, see if we can't get a little bit less. But it's right in that area, which is a good area to be in. And the nest, I believe, as I was looking through this, I believe when they call it nested, it is the nested liners, which just has lots of weight reduction and milling in there, some skeletonizing and all that sort of stuff, to really get that weight down to that inch per ounce sort of thing when it comes in there. And it is on bearings. Not a bad thing at all. A little bit deep on the cut. I don't know if you can see that, but it goes way inside there. Liner lock. Very predictable action. An interesting deployment hole, which does work. As you can see, it works in all directions. And the design is really, really cool. But before we get too far, go to the standard comparatives. Spyderco sandwich. Bam. That's pretty well in between, but with cutting, right, we got cutting edges close to the Paramilitary 2, handle space similar to the Para 3, and a weight that's somewhere in between. Strikes a nice balance between the two as far as a comparative goes on that one. And it's just a blur, which is a bit closer to the Drake Nest here. Right? It got similar size. Again, every time I do this, it just seems to me to be a call for a choil on a choiled blur. And not just any leak, but a random leak, where you have similar more hand space on the Drake here, and even more blade length. Again, these are both really, really nice. And if you're wondering again, there it is next to the Benchmade Bug Out, right? A little bit bigger, definitely heavier, similar cutting edge, and there it is, the Civivi Elementum. More hand space, more blade length, and all of that. So it's definitely in the mid-size, and yeah, as you can tell, my Wiener is bigger. All right, getting back into the design here, because there's one other knife that I had to go get because I had meant to bring it here and I didn't, that I want to really bring in here as far as the design comparison, because There is a lot of goodness in here. I'm not saying it's similar. It's a similar flavor, right? There's definitely some differences. Absolutely some differences. There's a bigger choil. In fact, you can't hardly get the medium worn. I don't think you can get the worn cleaver in medium with the choil anymore. I think it's only any of the smaller ones or the big ones or something like that. A little bit more edge on the Kubey and a little bit more overall length, but very similar hand space. You can get a little bit more. If you have bigger hands, there's a little bit longer space for your pinky on the Kubey. A very similar hand space for that one, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of similarities in spirit, and I mean that as a compliment because it's very, very well done. It's not full. There's a lot of things that are different on the Honey Badger Worn Cleaver, most notably the price, as well as just full flat grind and a little bit of change. But a lot of the same things that make the Honey Badger so nice are also present in the Kubey. Now, first things first on the design. It is good. It has that nice thumb ramp, which works really well in the saber grip. The overhand grip, you can even pinch up very, very well if you need to really get that tip and get something like a food prep sort of action where scoring or draw cuts goes right to the edge. You know where that tip is. It's really, really nice. Super pinch up you can. If you really need to bear down, you also can with it. Whoa. Man, I can't not tap that today. Anyway, so you can really bear down if you need to gorilla grip it or if you're getting the double. Why you would need to use this knife that hard is a whole different story, but you could probably do it in the pinch if you had to. One thing about it is it is a little narrow up here in the front. You got this big kind of wide blade, and the thumb ramp is nice, but it is a little bit narrow. This could have been a little bit thicker through here, or a little bit more than the same, but it's not. It's pretty nice in the saber grip, especially. The scoring, all fantastic. Ergonomics are pretty good. A little bit to be desired in certain bits, but it's not that it's uncomfortable. It just could be more comfortable, right? There's no hot spots. Deep carry clip almost. It's one screw, so it goes to there. That's all that's going to stick up out of your pocket. Your jeans are going to go approximately to right there. So yeah, there's that, which is an interesting, and it looks to be a milled titanium, which is interesting at this price range, or why they even did it, to be perfectly honest. Because could have almost just as easily done something else. It does sink in to the FRN, so it is not swappable over to the left-hand side. And interestingly, the screws on these pop out just a little bit. It's not anything bad, but it's there. And again, you can also get this pinch grip here where the pivot screws provide a nice little indexing place for your fingers. Does it well. Not bad on the design. It's fun. The nice sweeping primary bevel, a little bit of swedge out here on the tip, give it good cutting and slicing through continuous material properties. So it does it very, very well. It has a really good bit. In fact, let me get, I believe this is a 3mm or an 1/8 inch stock. 3mm, 0.119, 1195, approximately 3mm. And we will get up right behind the edge on this S30V. No, that's not behind. Oh, wait, yeah, maybe. There we go. 17 thousandths behind the edge. Can I get it a little bit? Let's see. Let's take another one, right? There. Oh, that's on the bevel. Okay, 15 thousandths. Right around between 15 and 17 thousandths. It's really hard to get accurate measurements here, you guys. For those who don't know, gotta get the very tip right where that primary bevel and the secondary bevel meet. If you get below it, it'll be too thin. If you get above it, it'll be too high. And it can, when you're measuring in the hundredths and thousandths of an inch. I'm going to go with 17. Every time I've tried several measurements now, and the bulk of them are at that 17 thousandths. Pretty good behind the edge. There's thinner ones in the 13 to 15 thousandths, and definitely thicker ones around the 22 thousandths or so. Not that that's bad. It's really dependent upon what you want the blade and the steel to be doing. This gives it a nice in between, and this is incredibly slicey. For out the box, that's pretty smooth. For those who are wondering, yeah, it does the curl. Really easy. Very well apexed. I really like S30V steel. I think out of the S30 or S35, I like the S30 better. S45VN is one that is very much coming up on radar, but it's just a little bit more expensive. For the money, I think S30V is better. You get more edge retention, a little bit less toughness, a little bit less corrosion resistance. But for where I live, D2 is plenty corrosion resistant, so S30V really appeals to me. Haha. So, all right. So now that we've got some of that out of the way, the aesthetics of it go right in hand with the design. Again, I'm a fan of the Honey Badger Warren Cleaver because I believe it gives so much personality to the knife, the way that they designed it, which it really gives personality. And I think they really tried to bring some personality to this, and they did a pretty good job. It's not my favorite, but it has a unique little eye. Definitely has some uniqueness to the front and gives it a little bit of attitude and almost a squint. It's almost like it's winking. It's kind of cute. So yeah, it has a new look to it, right? It has different. It's not the standard point. It's not the standard. You could call this, I'm sure there's people around who will call this a reverse Tonto as opposed to like a sheep's foot or a sheep's cliff or something like that. Or a clipped sheep's foot. Whatever way you want to look at it, it's got this very straight front end right there with this cool switch. It has, I mean, they could have got by with with that angle right there, been just fine. But having it just that little bit of swedge makes that tip move through, especially continuous material or softer material or thinner material, quite nicely. And that switch rolls right up to a fair amount of that tip. So that tip's going to move through stuff very well. High saber grind. Looks okay. I would have preferred the full flat grind if they would have just taken the flat grind right there and kept the curve, just done whatever. I think that would have actually been in some ways better. If the flat would have gone from all the way up here straight down. Could have had an interesting little bit there. It could almost have gone straight up to there and flat from that. Anyway, I'd have preferred that, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. Very slicey, still very, very, very capable. And the mechanics of it, snaps good. Very controllable on the drop. It's not a guillotine. It's not gonna, in fact, one of the nice things about it is it's not gonna really drop. For those of you who don't know, that's a knife bite right there. That's a knife bite. So I do have some drop shutties, some real guillotines in my collection. And sometimes I forget when I go to grab them. And I'll do that, and they just drop right on my hand, and I keep them sharp. So this one doesn't do that. It's very, very predictable and fairly linear in its dropping action, which I like. Little bit of shaking goes down just a little bit, and again, a lot of shaking makes it go all the way, or makes it go down a lot, depending on how hard you do it. Very controllable and predictable, which I like. It is drop shutty, it is, but at the same time, it is not a guillotine. It is controllable in its descent, which I like, as well as snappy in the opening. If you can hear that, really good action. And on the noteworthy points, Kubey is another one of those knives, like another brands like Petrified Fish, Send Cut. There's several now out there that have been, I would like to call them eBay brands or Amazon brands or something like that. They're just essentially small knife brands that I haven't been trying because there's a lot of crap out there. There just is. But some of them, Migron is another one I have not tried yet that I have seen on some videos that looks like it's starting to bring some pretty solid manufacturing and manufacturing capability, as well as business and integrity, as far as what kind of steel they say they have and they actually put in there, their heat treatment, and all that. That they're doing a good job when they say they are. Or more importantly, they're doing the job and making the equipment they say that they're doing, instead of just trying to manipulate a market by giving wrong information. We have way too much of that in this world. I don't care which side of any debate or anything you're on right now when it comes to social issues. There is far too many people who are just spewing stuff out their face without any information behind it. And if you've commented some sort of crap on this channel before, you'll find out not only do I like to interact with my viewers, I don't let it go unchecked or unchallenged. So we're in that place. Anyway, they don't seem to be doing this. I know there's a lot of spreadsheets out there that talk about manufacturers and the steels, which I want to address for just a moment. For those of you who weren't around back in the original ATI and NVIDIA video card wars and stuff like that, you won't probably remember, but I remember way back when they started to optimize the video cards for the testing software. I don't, some people say it was NVIDIA first, some people say it was ATI, blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing, for those of you who don't know, at first they would send the video cards to the testers, and it would be set up so that when they ran the testing software, it would optimize for that testing software, so it would basically inflate the score and make the video card look better. As long as they know where it's going, or they know that it could have that possibility, they will generally, in a lot of ways, try and skew the tests. It got to the point of where just the drivers to the video cards themselves would set up so that if you ran a benchmark software or any of the most popular benchmark softwares, it would optimize to it. So when I see a spreadsheet of one or just a handful of people coming in when it comes to brands, when they were sending you those knives, I have to assume they knew that you were going to test them, so they sent you the best one, because I've seen some Tucson knives that don't have it. Kubey doesn't seem to have that problem. I shouldn't say sharpness. It strops and behaves a lot like S30. I have stropped this once after using it. Not for anything. It was essentially 2 passes per side just to make sure. It was shaving sharp then. It was shaving sharp before, and it was shaving sharp after. And for those who are wondering, it was a 5 micron diamond strop. So approximately 5K. And yeah, it's still a wicked sharp and good knife. This thing is ridiculously sharp, and that is a thin secondary bevel. Don't have the angle on it. I just dropped it by eye, but that's a pretty good edge. And that's part of the noteworthy points. This is a lot of knife for the money. S30V, solid nested handles. Single biggest complaint, well, I'll get to that in the requests. But yeah, so a lot of knife for the money and a really good blade. 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, whichever you want to look at. It's a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch, closer to 3 millimeters. 0.118, I believe. But so yeah, it's definitely closer to the 3 millimeter, was a little bit higher, looks like granite. It was probably 1/8 of an inch and then ground down. But I digress. The intended purpose of this is supposed to be a good EDC knife, and it does that. This is a fantastic. The blade shape with that little bit of belly, especially with that rise at the end, very cool. You get a lot of arc when you're cutting, right? So you can get, like, if you're cutting something right here, you get a lot of arc as you move through. Very, very cool. Great edge retention. This thing's going to hold an edge for a long time. Right up there with CPM 20 CV, and depending upon what you do with it, maybe even longer. Standardized tests put 20 CV longer in the Catcher test and all that stuff. May or may not, your mileage may vary. To me, the S30V and CPM 20 CV in practical use are essentially equivalent. when you look at some of the testing, it talks about millimeters of cardboard cut. Let's say one is 600 and the other 700. Look, 100 millimeters is 10 centimeters. That's 4 inches of cardboard. That's like 4 inches of cardboard difference in edge retention. Right? Hey, kitty. That's about 4 inches different. So in reality, yeah, they're relatively equivalent. The card stock they use in the Katra, 25 micron grains of silica or sand are in it, about 600 grit. So there you go. So you're essentially a really light 600 grit and less sandpaper. And yeah, CPM 20 CV in that particular case cut what would be the equivalent of 4 inches more. Now that's there as a percentage is a whole different thing, but in reality, when I'm cutting, like say almost a meter of cardboard, right? That's a few boxes of really, cardboard doesn't have that much. It does have mud and other stuff in it, but it's going to have much smaller like silk particles and stuff. I just haven't seen it be that much. If they both go to about a dull at about the same point, if it's able to cut, if it happened in the same set of boxes or the same set of envelopes, something like that, I wouldn't notice the difference. So S30V works really great for me. No complaints. And the intended purpose, S30V does a really good job. CPM 20 CV has a bit better corrosion resistance. S30V has more toughness, and in some ways more strength to go with that toughness. Not knowing for sure, but there seems to be more catastrophic failures with CPM 20 CV. I have yet to have a catastrophic chip on an S30V. I don't try to get it, but just in regular use, never had it happen. So I think they did a really good job on the intended purpose. And the cost to value ratio is under $100. It's somewhere in that $90 to $100 range, depending upon where you find it. I'm sure you can find sales where it's closer to 90, and then there's other places where it'll be 99 and you pay tax and it's a little over 100. But it's right around $100. Considering how many other knives are out there with S30V, fiberglass reinforced nylon handles, don't even have a full nest, fully nested liner, and are 50% more than that. That's pretty good. You know, even things like the Bug Out or other S30V knives really have a hard time keeping up. You can find some S35 yen. There's some ones that are closer, especially in the Chinese-made realm. But that's what it is. But it does make it a really good cost-to-value ratio. And it is, of course, it is a package piercer. Because a shrink wrap slicer, that tip and that little bit on with the swedge on the tip, if you get that into something like a bubble wrap or a shrink wrap or any of that stuff, you can really control that quite well without and having it go in just that much, a lot of blade, plenty of height so it goes easy, and a swedge to make it go through. This is most definitely a shrink wrap slicer. Absolutely. Cardboard carver all day long. Absolutely. Again, just bam, bam, bam. You can get through with that. You can do little things that you need to get huge bits. It's got, for me, this is the usual bit. Overhand grip, thumb on there, get on the thing and slide down, like say the corner of a box and cut it into squares or slices or all this stuff. This is how I do it, knuckle over the top. But if you just need a few, or if you're used to doing it sideways or anything like that, getting a saber grip is often very good. And it does this very well. And with that tip, you can get it in, and it is definitely an envelope, eviscerator extraordinaire. Does that extraordinarily well, in fact. So, let's see here. In fact, just so you can, yeah, I get many of these. Very good on that. So yeah, does that part very well. Which then gets me to my expectations. I actually didn't expect this to be good. This is my second Kubey. I was impressed with the Kubey Leaf. There's a review already up on my channel. Not a bad little knife at all. In fact, a good little EDC knife for those who want it. Has a nice angle. Does a lot of generals with AUS 10 steel. Can do a lot of good stuff like pruning plants as on top of the normal EDC stuff. But I wasn't expecting. I just don't. this is the second Kubey. They're definitely winning me over. But I just wasn't expecting that much. Partly because this FRN, they say they try to make it look like G10. And it sucks. If this is G10, it's the worst G10 I've ever freaking seen. Right? This is FRN they tried to make look like G10. And it feels cheap. Right? It doesn't feel like G10. It really just, I mean, for crying out loud. It does not feel like that peel ply texture is not the same as this. Right? If it is G10, it's the cheapest G10. It's more like this FRN. Right? It's more like this FRN on the old Rat 2. Far more like this than it is anything else. And they put some texture on there, and that's nice. But really, if you're going to be doing injection molded stuff like this, just for crying out loud, man, don't try and make it. If it's G10, it's some of the crappiest G10 I've ever seen. It really is. It's just some of the worst G10 I think I've ever seen. That's my biggest complaint. Fix this handle. Like, this is a really good knife. It has a kind of a crappy feel to the handle. It not only feels cheap, it feels like they were trying to make it something it's not. Don't do that. Don't. That's like peel ply carbon fiber. I don't want it to just look like it. Okay? I want the depth of the chatoyance. If I'm getting carbon fiber, it's not because I'm like, ooh, carbon fibers. I want the chatoyance, right? I want the knowledge of knowing that I have pressed carbon fiber in a nice epoxy base, and the light's going through and giving me chatoyance and all that sort of stuff, so that when I move around, it looks cool. A couple of layers doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. So save the peel ply crap, please. G10 is a great material, but there's a reason why I like carbon fiber. There's a reason why some people like FRN. Like, for real, like, this is a great little knife. They don't pretend it's anything else. You got nested liners. Don't be something you're not, Kubey. Don't try and make this something that it's not. Okay? That's probably the single biggest request. Quit trying to pretend. This isn't make-believe days. We're not trying to, be, King Friday and all that. We're not in the land of make-believe like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We're just, let's not do that. It's cool that we can have a little bit of imagination when we're doing the design. Call it Drake like dragon, right? Kind of harken back to possibly a dragon's eye or dragon's face and give it a little bit of personality. I think that's fantastic. And then you slap some FRN nested handles on there and try and make it look like G10. Stop it. That's my request to go with it. Don't do that. But it's a pretty good knife. The design, as I just mentioned, fun, definitely has some personality and some uniqueness that goes with the aesthetics. It's got a good ergonomic design. That rounded clip on the very end could pose a hot spot, but they contour that over so much that the edges of it don't. It's only possibly at that tip. Not bad. Has good retention, a nice ramp to it. Not bad at all. And I think the aesthetics are cool. It's not completely unique, but it's unique enough and different enough from something like, which the closest thing I can see to this is something like the Honey Badger Worn Cleaver. And it's in the same genre, I would say, as far as like design aesthetics and feel, but it's different enough to be separate. It's obviously different enough. Like I said, you can see some similarities, but it is so different enough that it brings its own design flair to it. And the mechanics, look, they did a good job. This is well tuned. Out the box, been used, haven't cleaned this. Still works great. And the noteworthy points are S30V. The noteworthy points and the cost to value ratio are essentially the same thing. But the noteworthy points is unique and fun design, right? For the price point and the value that you get, the $100 or so for S30V in a well-made, nested liner lock, pretty great cost to value ratio. And that's part of the noteworthy point. You get S30V for under $100. You get a well-made, well-executed design for under $100. You get an outstanding EDC knife that'll hold an edge for months for under $100. You get something that you can expect to work well and do well for a long time for under $100 or thereabouts. So that's really where Kubey is gonna, you get all this for this price. They really are trying to hit that value segment quite well and hard. And they're doing a great job. I have to give them kudos on this. They did this one well. It's actually probably my favorite out of the two. I really do like the leaf. It's not bad. And again, this one's kind of fun for, not fun, but, well, yeah, fun. It's fun and useful when I'm out, like, trying to prune plants or anything like that, because I can get into some really cool places, has some cool angles, has really good edge retention, and is sharp enough and pointy enough to just only cut what I want. That little novelty is nothing compared to the full EDC beast that this Drake Nest is, because it really is. This really is just an EDC dragon. But yeah, it's well done. And that's really your thing. Design's good, aesthetics good, mechanics, I don't want to say flawless. There's a little bit of, but the breakover point right there, very small, right? Very well done on the design. It's really hard to do it. And the noteworthy points, intended purpose is an EDC, you know, package piercer, shrink wrap slicer, cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. Does that very well, plus some. And the cost to value ratio is up there. A lot of the other ones, even the other Kubey here, it has a similar cost to value. Yeah, this is cheaper, but you get more for the money. So it has a similar cost to value ratio. And if you're expecting it to be, you know, like a gas station knife or not well put together or anything like that, then you're going to be very pleasantly surprised with the quality and what it'll do. It seems to be well heat treated S30V, and definitely a decent design, easy to get in and out of the pocket, carries pretty deep, and has a lot of fun in the design. It looks kind of knifey, but doesn't look over. It's enough to make you look at it and go, that's different, in a good way. And I really like that. So on my damn nice categories, I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars. It really does do well. Again, I may have to get this up to where that would be like a 9-star, but then you got 9.5 and all that stuff to just get more granularity. If I were to do this on a 100-point scale, this would probably be in the 88 to 92. If we were doing this like wines, not that those matter, this would be in the 88 to 92 range. It's right up there, right? It's close to that 90th percentile when it comes to value. You won't be disappointed if you purchase it and you're expecting something like this. It will do exactly what you're expecting. And if you don't care about the fake texture and everything on the handles, no big deal. This is fantastic. And I'm going to end it right there. Very well done, Kubey. Again, I'm pleasantly surprised by the quality, the feel, and the craftsmanship. Very well done, and I'm happy that I tried it. Thank you, Kubey. And for anyone who's looking at this, it's a really good knife. The other Drakes have a lot of stuff in there, but this Drake Nest and S30V seems to be a great value. So with that, everyone, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.